All right, welcome back, everybody. Live at Drew's house, another edition. I hope everybody is doing okay out there, enjoying the. Well, Memorial Day was a little rough with the rain. Here we are, finally getting some nice weather again. Very excited about this show. A man I met probably many years ago. You'll know his story in just a moment. Sergeant Jeff Pugliese joins us. Hello, Sergeant. Retirement for you in Watertown. Congratulations, right off the bat. First of all.
Well, hello to you, and thank you so much.
All right, so people probably remember that name a little bit. You, of course, are one of the heroes of the marathon bombing and the days after. Why don't you remind everybody of that story? A couple days after the marathon bombings, your small little place of Watertown becomes center stage. Walk me through that night.
Let me see. I'd gotten off of work at midnight. I was late leaving the building, and I heard the officers say they were following a suspect, which was reported to the officers as a carjacking. And subsequently, one of the officers found the vehicle, followed it, and the vehicle that he was following pulled over. And it turns out it was Tamlin, got out of the vehicle and started walking towards the officer, firing at the cruiser. A second officer showed up, said they were taking gunfire, and called for help. I had just gotten into my personal vehicle, and I went up there and assisted them. When I got there, one of the bombs went off, one of the pipe bombs. Officers were returning fire, receiving fire. And I saw two of the officers in the front yard taking cover behind a vehicle, and I decided that, it was kind of like a standoff. Nobody was advancing, nobody was retreating. So I decided to go over some fences, through a few backyards, and flank the Tsarnaev brothers.
Was that just instinct for you to go after them in that way?
Yes, it was. It comes back to training. I had learned that back in 1974 in the Army in basic training. Flanking maneuvers.
Absolutely. So what is it? I mean, it's just mayhem on the streets, right? I mean, it's that night is, I'm sure you remember it probably more, maybe even clearer than you'd expect, but do things slow down for you? Or is it just mayhem?
I don't think it's mayhem. I don't think things slowed down, but I focused on what had to be done.
Mm-hmm. And then, you kind of put an end to this situation. Remind people, I mean, you come right there with Tamerlan, right?
Yes, I'd come up, I was probably about 30, 35 feet away from, maybe 40 feet initially. And he didn't know that I was there. I had come up out of a side yard, and their bodies were illuminated because they were standing in front of the car and the headlights on the vehicle were on. So it kind of lit them up for me. I drew my pistol. I took careful aim. I fired 3 or 4 shots, and I'm a pretty good shot. And I'm saying to myself, I know I hit him, but he's not reacting. Maybe I've seen too many movies where somebody gets shot and they go flying back.
Yeah.
But that's not reality. People can take bullets and keep standing and fighting. So anyways, I changed my tactic. I could see their feet under the vehicle. The reflection of the headlights, like I said, was illuminating them. So I decided to fire a couple of rounds of ammunition under the vehicle and bounce them off the street and try to take their ankles out. And ultimately, it turns out that I did hit them in the ankles. And that's when Tamerlan realized where I was. He came running up the street firing at me. Came up between, there was a 4-foot chain link fence. He was on one side, I was on the other. We're about 6 feet apart from each other, exchanging gunfire. Subsequently, in the middle of that gun battle, I had to reload my pistol and continued firing. His pistol, turns out now that he had run out of ammunition. He looked at his pistol, looked at me, threw the pistol at me, turned around and ran and started running towards the other officers. And I chased after him and tackled him. And then a couple of other officers came over and were helping me try to handcuff him, but he was still actively resisting us. And this is after I had shot him 9 times. Yeah. And then while we were trying to handcuff him, one of the other officers, Joe Reynolds, he says, Sarge, the other guy got in the car, he turned around, he's coming at us. And I turned my head to the right and I could see the headlights. And then the other two officers, Reynolds and McClellan, that were helping me, they backed off because the car was coming right at us. I grabbed Tamerlan by the belt and was trying to drag him out of the path of the car. And the younger brother, Zokar, just kept coming. I looked again, and the headlights were right in front of my face. I dropped back. I felt the breeze of that vehicle go by my face. And I saw Tamerlan, while I was laying there, get run over by his brother.
Mm. I mean, you must have, you talk about a car whizzing right by you. I mean, you must have, I don't know if your life flashes before your eyes, but I mean, you gotta be thinking, I mean, this is not a great scene we find ourselves in here.
Well, believe it or not, that's the furthest thing from like thinking about your own self-preservation. In my feelings is you're acting as things are going. You really don't have a lot of time to think about your own self-preservation. You're just doing what needs to be done.
And making sure you help the other officers. So this is a very dramatic scene. Let's go back a little bit though, because the marathon bombings are days before. And of course, the city of Boston is shut down. You guys are Watertown, obviously, right next door. But I mean, were you, what happened after the bombings? Are you guys just kind of watching it on TV like the rest of us? I mean, are you asked to do some help? What's the deal there?
We have some of our offices that belong, I don't know if you ever heard of the organization NEMLEC. Mm-hmm. It's, for your listeners that may not know what it is, it's the Northeast Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. And it's a coalition between, I'm guessing, 40 or 50 police departments. It's too expensive for smaller police departments to run their own SWAT team and tactical response teams. So every department that joins NEMLEC has a percentage of their department. I think Watertown has like 4 officers or 5 officers that belong to this NEMLEC organization. And then say Newton has 8 or 10 because they're a larger department. Waltham might have 8 or 10 because they're a little bit of a larger department. So when you put it all together, you have these 50 or 60 communities that contribute police officers. Now you have a force tactically trained that can respond in large numbers. You might have 150 officers that are in this NEMLEC organization that can respond. So the NEMLEC officers were in Boston from Watertown that night, assisting Boston.
Interesting. So that, I mean, you guys were, I mean, you certainly don't know that it's going to be a showdown in Watertown and a gunfight, but I mean, they could be in the area. I mean, I think everybody kind of knew that was the case, right?
Correct.
So
yeah, nobody knew where to look for them.
Mm-hmm. When you, I can imagine it's a 41-year career for you, correct? I have that?
Yeah, 41 years, 4 months, and 24 days.
Am I correct to say that not a lot of people are able to do 4 decades? It's a stressful job. That's a long career these days, right?
Yes, it is.
What is it? When you look back on it, how many times have you fired your weapon before that night on the job?
Never.
Never.
Never. Other than for training purposes, I had never had to fire my weapon in the line of duty.
And now here you are on that night.
Yes.
That is, I'm sure you've thought about that a lot. What a first time to fire the weapon on this gunfight in Watertown.
Yes, it was definitely an unusual evening.
What about, I know people that were living in that neighborhood that night and scared as could be. I know that's who you're there protecting as you're running through backyards trying to put an end to this situation. But to this day, they still see certain marks on the street and bullet marks, and it reminds them of that. And they just say, you can't put into words the job that those officers did that night. I mean, this was 2 guys that were nothing to lose, and they were on the run for it, and they had no plans of being caught. How tough is that, dealing with that sort of enemy when they got nothing to lose, and that's the approach they're taking?
Well, the worst part of it, I think, is that the initial responding officers had no idea who they were dealing with. As far as the way it was broadcast to the cars, it was a carjacked vehicle, and they may be armed. And so we all thought we were dealing with carjackers. We never thought we were dealing with the marathon bombers.
That never crossed anybody's mind, just you not thinking that.
Yeah, well, we didn't find out who we were dealing with until after it was all said and done, and other agencies are showing up. We have, all the surrounding cities and towns sent officers when the call for help went out, and then, Boston officers showed up, and then, people are showing up and they're saying, who you guys got here? And we said, a couple of carjackers. And they said, no, you got the Boston Marathon bombers you've been dealing with here. And the who? We had no idea who we were dealing with when that incident started.
How long into that night do you think? Do you remember the exact moment when somebody said that to you and you said, oh my goodness?
Yeah, it was, well, what happened is after, I had had the shootout with Tamerlan and his brother ran him over. A couple of officers came over and helped me handcuff him. And then the call came out that we had an officer down. That was that transit police officer, Dick Donahue. Mm-hmm. So everybody went running to assist him and left me standing there with Tamerlan. So I kind of stood there, and he's still trying to move around and stuff. So I put my foot in his back and held him down, called for an ambulance. And then once the ambulances had arrived, taken him away, and now all the, the cavalry arrived, that was probably 15 to 20 minutes after Tamerlan had been taken away in the ambulance that we found out who we were dealing with. In the meantime, what we were doing is, because Zokar had gotten away, myself and the other supervisors on scene were trying to organize all the different agencies. And you have to realize we all have different radio frequencies, and we're all trying to coordinate. We're trying to set up a perimeter, until our command staff arrived on scene and took over.
You say that very casually, like it's all business, but Sergeant, you're there with Tamerlan Tsarnaev, just you and him on the ground there, really what ends up being his final moments. I mean, that is a situation I can't even imagine being in. That must be kind of strange for you to look back on too.
Yeah, it is. I don't mean to make light of this, but there's a backstory to this. Is my wife, it's like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever the time frame was. I don't remember the exact time, but while I'm holding Tamerlan, my cell phone is ringing like crazy, and I answered the phone, and it was my wife. And
you picked up the phone?
Yeah, I looked at the phone to see who was calling me. I didn't know if it was somebody within the department or whatever. But what had happened is I have 3 brothers that live in Alaska, and so there's a time difference. And one of my brothers was getting ready to go to bed, and he turned on the news, and Watertown, Massachusetts, his hometown, is on the news. So he's watching it for a few minutes, and everything's being reported live as it's going down at this point. So he called my wife and asked, "Where's Jeff?" He woke my wife up because I was working till midnight and I was late getting home. Sometimes, you get stuck doing a report, or you might even go out and have a couple of beers with the guys after work. And she goes, I don't know. I don't know. He was working. I don't know where he is, So, and she goes, why? What's going on? And he says, well, Watertown is on the news. And she goes, Watertown, Massachusetts? And he said, yes, you got to turn on the TV. So with that, they hung up and she turned on the TV. And she called me and she says, where are you? And I said, I'm busy. I can't talk right now. She goes, are you in Coolidge Square, which is a business district near where the incident happened? And I said, no. I said, look, I'm sorry, but I'm okay. I just shot somebody. I will call you back when I can. And I hung up on her. So, so now she's going out of her mind at home, I'm sure.
The life of a police officer's husband, huh? My goodness. I can't imagine what does she say when she tells that story back now? That must be a whole different perspective.
Yeah, she's and what it was is my son and her, they waited up all night because I didn't get home until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon after that, just with all the administrative stuff that went with it, because myself and the other officers that were on scene were put on administrative duty at that point, and we weren't allowed to participate in the rest of the manhunt or anything. But, around 6 o'clock in the morning, they had us go to the station. From there, they had us, and they took our firearms from us because we'd been involved in a shooting and reissued us new firearms. Then they sent us up to St. Elizabeth's Hospital for an evaluation to see if we had any injuries. I was, when I got there, I had scraped up the heels of my hand when I tackled him, and my hands were covered in his blood. So they're scrubbing me down, and then they had a psychiatrist come in and talk to us briefly. They put me on an anti-AIDS medication because they don't know if he had any diseases. And
Did he
then they,
say anything to you while you had him pinned down? Does he say anything like?
no, he never said a word. Never said a word.
Hmm, that's
No, yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah. And then they, then they brought us back to the police station. And the Boston police stress team was there. They wanted to debrief us a little bit, make sure we were okay mentally and physically. And then about 2 o'clock, we got cut loose and we were told we could go home. I got home. Now my son and my wife are waiting for me, and naturally,
You had to say sorry. You had to say sorry for hanging up, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then I said, look, I got to go to bed. I'm exhausted. I had been up since probably 6 a.m. the day previous. I've been up for over 30 hours. And, so I went upstairs to go to bed to try to get some sleep. And my wife came upstairs, and as I'm getting out of my uniform, my undergarments are soaked red in blood. And she freaks out. I'm wearing a blue uniform. You couldn't see that. And she goes, oh my God, did you get hurt? No, I'm not hurt. I'm okay. I'm not, if I was hurt, I'd know if I was hurt. But, it turned out it was all his blood, that I was saturated in. I went to bed for an hour. I couldn't sleep. I got up, put on the TV, and just like the rest of the world, watched the rest of the drama unfold on television.
Was that, again, we're joined here by Sergeant Jeff Pugliese, one of the heroes of that night in Watertown, took down Tamerlan Tsarnaev in those days after the marathon bombings. Was that a relief for you when you saw the brother? Just a sense of this thing's going to be over soon. It must have been a huge relief to see that.
Yeah, I was, when myself and the other officers got put on administrative leave, we were all very annoyed that we could not continue in the manhunt. We initiated it. It started with us, and we got, told, nope, you can't go do anything anymore. You're on administrative duty. You shot somebody, and it was, yes, it was great to see it come to a successful end, and they got him. But it was very hard for us initial officers to not have been able to continue to participate in that manhunt.
Because you feel like the job's not done yet, right? Somebody has got away from a scene and you're not finished.
That's exactly it. We wanted to be involved in that manhunt, and it just wasn't allowed for us.
When you think back of, we've heard all sorts of stories throughout this thing, from the moment the bombings happened in Boston to the night of you guys, about just how communication was difficult. I mean, those aren't normal situations. When you think back, is it a sense of pride of your department and how the officers came together that night, or what's your general feeling on that?
The department came, so many of the officers, they were off duty and they got wind of it, and they just suited up and came in to help. We have guys that live out as far as Bill Rick or Tewksbury, and and they're not living in town, and they all suited up and just came in without being called. They wanted to help, and to think that initially that night there were 4 patrol officers working the street and the sergeant, so there were 5 police officers on the street that night when this incident started. And like I said, I was late leaving work, and I had just gotten in my personal car and headed up that way, and then to have the cavalry come, not just from every city and town, but all our off-duty officers, suited up and came in without being asked.
I think about you guys often, especially over these last couple years, where obviously it's no secret policing has been in the spotlight. And I think about how the community rallied around all you guys. I mean, it was cheers on the streets. I'm sure you guys didn't buy a cup of coffee for a long time. Yeah. What is your thought on the last couple of years here with all these incidents and the protests on the streets? I'm sure you have a lot of opinions, but.
Well, number one, like you said, back in 2013 when the incident happened, people came out and they were cheering us, and and number one, you'd never seen anything like that prior to that. The public coming out in mass like that and cheering the police, and and then somewhere along the line we became the enemy. I don't understand it. Yeah, there have been some terrible incidents that have happened across the country. But those are the exceptions. When you really look at the number of encounters that police have with the public, day in and day out. There's got to be millions upon millions of encounters of the police with the public. And yes, there are some bad apples in policing, but there are some bad apples in plumbing, bad apples in carpentry, bad apples in the media, and I just don't know when we became the enemy. We do our best. We have outreach programs, community policing. And I do believe, however, that the people that are against us, that want to defund the police, I believe they are the minority and not the majority. However, the majority is not speaking up to support us. I really do believe that people want and support the police.
I would imagine in a place like Watertown too, that there's a element of the people never forget what the officers did that night. I mean, there's just, every community is different when it comes to policing, right? And I would think there's probably a different level of, we've been through some stuff here.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, like I said, I do believe that the vast majority of people support the police. I believe the ones that want to defund us are a smaller portion of the public. Even now, well, not anymore as of yesterday, but, I'll be standing someplace, whatever I may be doing. I'll be in uniform. I may be getting a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. I may be out, at an accident scene or whatever. And invariably, somebody will come up and say, thank you for your service and thank you for what you do to keep us safe. And I get those comments all the time. People do appreciate and support the police.
And then I have to ask you, I would be remiss to let you go without asking you what it was like to see your story played in a big screen movie by a huge actor. That must have been kind of an out-of-body experience.
Yeah. And that was quite the experience. And I actually got to know J.K. Simmons very, very well. He's been at my house for dinner. My wife and I have been out to dinner with him and his wife, and we still stay in contact. As a matter of fact, at my last roll call yesterday, he had sent a video congratulating me on my retirement. He is really a real gentleman. He is a really nice guy.
That's great. You thought he took care of you. Did a good job?
Yeah, he did a good job. Yes.
And that's going to be at some point. When did you finally get to? Was it 6 months? Was it a year? Have you even done it now, where you are able to kind of take a deep breath and look back on it all and process it clearly? I mean, is that still happening every day, maybe?
No, it really doesn't pop into my head a lot, except for when I may see something on the news or read it in the paper. His lawyers are appealing to have a new trial, or his death penalty has been, suspended, or better yet, he's getting a stimulus check in the mail. Yeah, it's like, that's when I may sit back and think about what happened those days, but I don't dwell on it. I'm not going to let that be, I'm trying to think of the word. Defining. Yeah, I'm not going to let it be the defining moment in my life. I'm not going to let them have that win.
Yeah. Is that your wife right there?
Yeah, my wife is there.
She can answer. What was it like getting that phone, having him pick up the phone?
She's a little tied up right at the moment.
I gotta tell you, I don't think I remembered that story. You probably told it, and it's just, there's so many stories from that time, but I just cannot believe he answered the phone. It's priceless.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Sergeant Pugliese, I know you have a busy time here. It's ironic you're busy as you're retiring, but I know so many people want to give you this time to say goodbye, and of course, congratulations. An unbelievable 41-year career. I imagine you're going to miss it. You don't stay in it that long if you're not going to miss it.
Yeah. I could have retired 11 years ago with a full pension, but being a police officer is really, in my opinion, the greatest profession in the world. You get to chase bad guys, but the biggest part of it is helping people. There's nothing more rewarding than you get a heart attack call and you have to do CPR on somebody, and you find out that after they've gone to the hospital the next day that they're going to survive. You saved their life. You brought them back to life. Those are the things that really make this profession so rewarding, is the impact, the positive impact that you can make on people's lives.
Well, you're one of the great ones and have quite a story to tell. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for all your service over the years. And I remember when you came into the newsroom back, the days after all this happened, you guys could not have been nicer to us, and you didn't want to be treated like heroes, but you truly are for your work that night.
Well, thank you very much.
And all the work,
Appreciate it.
all the years on the beat as well. So thank you for everything.
If I can just ask you one favor,
Sure.
I don't know if you can put this in part of the broadcast or whatever you're doing, but if I could just ask the good people that are out there that support the police and these groups that are trying to get us defunded, please contact your local officials and tell them that you want us out there and that you need us out there. That's so important. We have organizations in Watertown that are trying to have our budget cut by $2 million. There's 4 or 5 organizations, they want to defund the police. If we lose that $2 million in our funding, that means 20 police officers will lose their job. That's 1/3 of our department. How do you continue to function with 1/3 of your department gone?
I can tell you're still a little bit worried about the state of policing in that regard.
Yes. The police are needed out there. They are that, as they say, the thin blue line. That they keep order in society and they keep good people safe.
You certainly did that night. Sergeant Jeff Pugliese, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And I know you're probably doing a few of these on your way out, but I hope you get some rest at some point, sir. You deserve it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant.
All right. Have a good day.
All right. Sergeant Jeff Pugliese right there. How about that? We were talking off the air a little bit too about his name and how many people mispronounce it. So I was very careful it's not spelled that way, but it is pronounced Pugliese, which is what an unbelievable story. I mean, the days after the Boston Marathon, that all went down right there in Watertown, and he was one of the heroes. And I mean, I'm still almost processing some of those stories of being one-on-one, pinning Tamerlan Tsarnaev down. I believe Jahar is what we translate the brother's name to. It's funny how so many officers I've heard continue to say the name with all the letters like we had to do in those early newscasts before we learned. But it's almost, I don't know. It's interesting to hear that name mispronounced. It's almost like they go out of their way not to try. But I mean, he's a hero. What they did that night in Watertown, I remember living through it, and it was, that was a wild night, hearing that stuff and the chaos and the gunshots and the bombs. And where's this coming from? One of our coworkers, Jay, lives in that neighborhood at WPC at the time. And I remember talking to him on the phone, and he said he had to hang up to go protect his family a couple times. It felt like the gunshots were getting close, and just an unbelievable night and what those officers did. I mean, think about that. I'm still comprehending that, jumping through backyards, trying to flank the Tsarnaevs, coming face to face. Tamerlan Tsarnaev throws a gun at him after he runs out of bullets. Amazing story. Sergeant Jeff Pugliese and the rest of the Watertown officers and all the officers who were out there fighting that night, pretty crazy. And the reason why, of course, we're talking to Sergeant Pugliese is because he is retiring after 41 years. So we wish him all the best and some rest in retirement. Unbelievable story. And a really good guy, too. I talked with him a little bit off the air here as we got going. And he's, like I said, he's one of the good ones. All right. So Sergeant Pugliese, thank you so much. Thank you for all those years of service. Hope you enjoy retirement. Hope you all enjoy the show. Hope you enjoy the day. And we'll see you next time. All right. Live from Drew's house. Bye-bye now.